Why should Instagram have all the art fun?
Why not bring the art conversation to LinkedIn?
I'm Melissa, an artist and a culture sleuth.
I'm Nina. I'm a visual storyteller, a LinkedIn content creator, and a photographer.
Creativity is as vital to a successful business venture as it is to an artist.
So why is the conversation about art and business segregated to different media platforms?
That's what led us to create a live show on LinkedIn.
We interview fascinating experts and explore art and how it relates to business, technology, and education.
Welcome to An Artful Life, curious conversations about the ways humans make and use art.
And there we are.
Hello.
Welcome, Aimee. So, Melissa, why don't you introduce today's guest on An Artful Life for us?
I would love to. First, I want to thank Denise Sarajin and Victoria Kalaichi for letting me broadcast from their studios here in New York. And welcome, everybody. I am so happy to present Aimee Erickson, who is a new person in my constellation. We met a couple of years ago at the Oil Painters of America Nationals when I stood in front of a still life with the most glorious light and was raptured by it and sought out its creator, thus discovering Aimee. And I just felt a natural kinship even before I discovered her eloquence and profundity and consistency in creating beautiful, beautiful paintings. And then casually but sincerely in a parking lot, I said, come visit me in Spain someday. And about 8 months later, she brought her dear friend Susie Baker and they showed up in Spain. And we had the greatest time in the world. And I just knew that you would love her too. So here we all are.
Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome.
Great introduction.
That brings back a lot of good memories.
Say that again?
It brings back a lot of good memories.
It does.
That's wonderful. So before we jump into our catalog of questions, tell us about your background. Are you in your studio? Where are you?
Sure. I'm in, you mean my literal background?
Yes. Yes.
I am. I'm in my studio. I'm in the upper studio. I also have an additional room over there so I have a lot of studio space. You know that, that it's a little joke architectural diagram of this, like a big building with like kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, studio.
That's all our dream.
Yeah, it is. That's how it is. It's like a tiny house and a ton of space to do things. So
how inspiring.
Yeah.
I wish I'm still at my kitchen table or at my computer desk. So
so much good work has been done at kitchen tables.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm working on it.
Mm-hmm.
So what brought you to painting sort of just in broad strokes?
Oh, well, painting, everybody paints when they're a kid, right? Like, it was just something that I love to do. And I feel like I never really got any interference there. So I just have been able to keep it my own thing. Like I eventually, got a degree in illustration, which I didn't know there was such a thing as art school when I was in high school and figuring out where I was going to go. So discovering this illustration program I couldn't believe it was an actual major that they would let you like do those classes and then graduate. So I did that. And I was really lucky. It was a really solid program. It was perfect for me. And then I've been freelancing for 30 years now.
That's amazing that you fell into a program.
Right.
Yeah, it was lucky. Yeah, I count myself really lucky.
So when you say you were freelancing as a painter or as an illustrator or both?
Well, this is a little bit embarrassing, but I really had no idea how to have a career. All I'd ever really thought about was paint and painting and being in my little world. And I didn't take it very seriously. I didn't really think about how to make a career out of it. Like, my dad would always be like, "How's your business going?" And I was like, "Really not. It's really not a business, Dad." But I think he was being hopeful. So yeah, I did a whole lot of different types of artistic endeavors early on. I would paint people's walls. I did murals. I was young and I had a ton of energy and I just had ideas for everything. And I did some design and I did some illustration and I was always, painting, but I wasn't really connected to galleries or events until about like 12 years ago.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that that kind of leads to something that's always a point of curiosity for me, because since I was a pre-teenager, I knew that we artists are important to society. But one of the things I struggle with is naming how. And so I love on this show to ask our guests, how do you think about the various things that artists do in society? How do you think about our contribution? What is it that what do we do for people in your mind?
I can really relate to that, Melissa, because when I grew up in Sunnyvale, California, which in the 70s and 80s was turning into Silicon Valley.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Earlier in its history, it had been called the Valley of the Heart's Delight because it was some of the best agricultural land in the world. But it was becoming Silicon Valley. And, my dad was a NASA engineer and everybody we knew was, it was all business and science. And I didn't know any professional artists. It was just something that I really enjoyed doing. Loved the pursuit, loved asking myself, how would I mix that color?
Mm-hmm.
But I have considered this question quite a bit because art doesn't make money necessarily. Business models make money. But I do think that art and the pursuit and artistic pursuits are such a valuable part of a full life. I think in America we've things have skewed towards productivity and profit, and I think those things are good.
Of
But
course.
I also think, yeah, I do. Yeah, they are. But I also, but I remember, I have a funny story for you. I was listening to the radio in the car one day, and I was listening to that that NPR stock report program. And I remember it just hit me like, it's not color that makes the world go round, it's money. I really thought it was color because color affects how you feel. And that was a game changer for me. But okay, so to answer your question, I feel like artistic pursuit is such a beautiful, fulfilling part of an individual life. And you can sit down and pick up any instrument, a pen, a pencil, a piece of charcoal, a paintbrush, and you can make a mark, and you've entered a place that is part of our history as human beings, mark making. And when you make a mark and pay attention, you are human in a way that is really important.
That's beautifully said.
Yep. I love that. That's probably one of my favorite quotes ever.
Yeah.
Including the, it's not, and I can relate to that so much. It's not color that makes the world go round. It's money. But yes, that realization probably was yeah. But again, it's always in the eye of the beholder, right? So no.
That's also a really interesting thing. I mean, you say it with humor, but I know for you individually that would have been true. But think about in childhood, you don't know that money is what makes an adult life possible. You go through your day as a child not having to pay the rent, and it's a totally rational thought that color makes the world go round.
Yeah. Yeah, and that part of growing up where you realize how the role that money plays and having to pay the mortgage and pay the bills and stuff, that's a harsh awakening. Like that's the part of adulthood that is kind of an interruption of what was just pure joy up to then. Sometimes.
So when you now, as an adult who pays the mortgage, are mark making, what are the genres of painting that give you the most joy?
Well, honestly, it's whatever's on my easel at the time. And I will paint. I paint such a wide variety of subjects because I do like painting people and still life and interior scenes and plein air landscape and studio landscape. So I've kind of failed to specialize.
I love that.
And I'll tell you why. Like earlier on, I was surprised that there were different that there were divisions between those things. I just thought it was all a painting problem, like a design and color problem. Whether it's a teapot and a cup with some plums, or whether it's a mountain and a tree. I just thought like it's a question of how you're solving the design and color within your little format. And so
And your design background would support that.
it did support that. Yeah, it did support that. And then but since then I have realized that those things are delineated in general categories for really good reasons, because certain solutions apply in a landscape that are less applicable in a still life. Like there's certain, the big difference is when you go from a figure ground relationship, like person background or teapot background, to the landscape, which is not a figure ground relationship. And it's less of a light and shadow situation and figure ground situation, and it's more of a distance situation, more of like an atmospheric, like building the distance into the painting.
Where your stage goes from being 3 feet deep to 10 miles deep.
Yes, but it's not just the depth. It's that, and I know you know this, Melissa, but like it's like it's a different setup from the get-go, because, well, if you're used to looking at the object and figuring out the relation of the object to the background, this happened to me. You go into the landscape and you're like, I don't see anything here. Like I'm in Florence. I'm standing on the banks of the Arno. I'm looking up the river, and there's a bridge and there's some buildings and stuff. And I was like, I don't see anything to paint. It's just like all a bunch of stuff.
Oh, wow. Oh.
And this would be interesting between the two of you, because Nina is a landscape photographer.
I mean, I'm just thinking, like, to me, I mean, I'm taking some drawing classes now, and we're doing, like, last month we did all shapes and light. And I was so overwhelmed by the immediacy of that freaking cup in front of me and whatever was behind it. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I see that vast expanse of nature with that hopefully soul tree in the foreground or whatever it is, that to me comes supernatural, and I can process that really well and make it work for me. And I actually found out that I spend probably more time photographing what I was supposed to draw, such that the drawing was easier. But because it was such a challenge for me, right? Because I never thought in terms of that, right? I've always only thought in terms of expanse or super micro, like, a leaf with a morning dew drop on it or something like that.
Yeah. I just think that's so interesting, Nina, because, and I think this goes back to your question, Melissa, of like, what role does art play? Like we all have sort of our natural way of seeing the world, and there's slight variations, but when you start learning about how you see and how to see differently, there are some big shifts and big changes in how you can perceive things. And I think that when you're learning how to paint, this is the most organic way for your painting to change, is to see something differently, not to be told how to paint something in a certain way, but to look at it and learn a way to see, and then try to put that into your painting.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that I came to being a maybe 65 to 70% still life painter by accident when I didn't have access to models and was sick and tired of painting my face, and I didn't choose to paint from photographs. And so what I had available to me most easily was still life. And then I, when all the little cells are going like, yay, this is so good, yay. But I still make myself leave that delicious zone to cross train a little bit. I also like painting figures. I really have to push myself with landscape. That's not an easy thing for me. But then when you go back into that juicy zone, there is a freshness to the eyes. What I'm trying to say, Aimee. I am agreeing with you that switching muscles and doing the thing that isn't the naturalist thing is so nourishing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think I can see that in your work, Melissa, because the way you set up your still lifes and the way you paint them is not there's a consideration of the space in a way that is not really just figure ground.
Oh, thank you. What a nice thing.
Yeah, really enjoy your work.
Talking about still life, how do you think about still life? It's such a mystery to so many people. Why would you put a teacup and some fabric over there and think about it? What would you say to them?
Well, a lot of it is what you just said, that it's available. Yeah. Like, do you want to do a self-portrait? Like, you might not have access to a model. You might not be in a beautiful landscape, but you need a problem that you can solve. And so that's a big part of it. There's a lot of solvable problems in still life. Also, I think there are a lot of stories to be told. I think a lot of still lifes tell, objects hold meaning. We don't have to invent metaphor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you just choose. You know what? It's so interesting. I think you don't even, as an artist, you don't have to even consciously know what the metaphors are.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Sometimes you set it up and you have a feeling about it, but as you're painting it, you realize some relationships between things, or some story that you hadn't been aware of. And then you have a choice about, telling a little bit more of that. And then there's the times where you paint something and somebody else looks at it and is like, oh, this, I see the story.
Yeah. Nina, I've never asked you, how do you, I know that I'm an intuitive, I compose intuitively, and I'm more of a vessel for a story that wants to come out, and I get to be the trumpet that the music comes out of. And it sounds like, Aimee, you do that a little bit too. But there are artists who intellectually know they have something to say, and they plan a composition which does that for them, and they naturally work that way. Which are you?
I think I'm at this. Phew. I don't know. I mean, for me, it is about, certainly beauty. I think for me, the photography part is a lot about the mystical of it. So those I call them thin places, which is a term I learned from Samir, our mutual friend, where reality and the otherworldly kind of get together. And which is why, I get super excited when it's foggy out and rainy and cloudy, because that's where I find myself, being able to create with the unknown without being able to have the brush to create the unknown, which is sometimes the drawback with photography, because you get what you get. So yeah, I would say definitely it's definitely sort of a feel thing, not a. I mean, But it's definitely not a political or socio something or other comment running through my work. That's for sure not. Yeah.
That's that right there, Nina, is something that never made sense to me. That whole like, what are you trying to say with your art?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm not trying to say anything. Just say something really pretty that I saw that somehow has some meaning to me.
Mm-hmm.
And but then I realized that is saying something.
That says you value beauty in the human life.
Yeah, and it's not a statement that is verbal.
Yeah.
So like when it happens in a painting and it's really clear, then the painting is doing something that only the painting can do.
Right. It's not the money, right? I think that's where we're circling back to, right? I think the people who want to see a message in the painting are also probably the people who want to see, track their KPIs and know what the money's doing. And I think then there's that other mystical, spiritual beauty, let it be for l'art pour l'art, right? Art for the sake of art. I had a really interesting conversation with. I was at the ICP International Center for Photography, and there was a street photography exhibit, and I walked in as only Nina can walk in by and like, I can do that. I can do that better. I can do that better. And it was not art to me, right? It was a political commentary. And I'm like, why is it in a museum, or why is it labeled and I got into I walked into by coincidence into a guided tour, and I took it because it was open to the public, and I had a really long conversation with the curator who totally disagreed with me and said this is all art. I'm like, no, to me this is not art. To me this is an important part of the human experience, but it's not art.
I think they can. I think they can meet like
the aesthetics have to be there for me at least. I need a certain amount. If I'm shooting a sign that has a very political meaning, but it's not well framed, it's not well shot, it's lousy quality, it's printed sloppily. To me, that's where I'm like, you lose me,
Yeah.
And
I was thinking of it was WPA, and she was sent around to photograph during the Depression, Dorothea somebody, and there's that that super famous photograph of the woman with children, and they're starving, but artistically it's beautiful. In fact, it's so beautiful that it takes a while for you to realize that there is a message about what's going on politically. Yeah. But yes, I hear you.
I have a story about an art museum similar, Nina. This is my friend Allison was with her little kids in an art museum, and when they were looking, it was an installation exhibit, and she wasn't sure she was in the right place. Walked in this gallery, and there's some stuff in there, but she wasn't sure. But there was an attendant, and she said, "Is this where the art is?" And the attendant goes, "So they say."
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's funny, actually. Yeah. So they say.
Yeah.
Melissa, do you want to take the next one?
I sure do. And there goes the again. I always remember, no, don't do Fine. When I first saw your work, Aimee, and now every time I see your work, I first look for what you're doing with the light. And I feel like, some people are like Anselm Kiefer, are texture people. I, in my heart, think of you as a light person. What would you say about that?
I love that. I'm delighted. Yeah, that's delightful. Would you like to hear a poem about that?
Oh, hell yes.
Yes, that would be great. And then we'll look at your art.
Okay.
All right.
This is a poem by William Bronck titled "The Annihilation of Matter." And I bring this up just because it describes exactly how what we're talking about with light in paintings. Okay, the annihilation of matter. The light, at least, was not to be dismissed. A hunked-up moon rode a starred sky. Those objects, what were those objects? Some trivial trees, something. Never mind. It was the light that mattered. As earlier that afternoon, the wash of sun crossing the same place, but it was not the same in a different light. Would it be otherwise in a real world? Who could answer? Here, it was always the light that mattered, and only the light. Once it had seemed the objects mattered, the light was to see them by. Examined, they yielded nothing, nothing real. They were for seeing the light in various ways. They gathered it, released it, held it in. In them, the light revealed itself, took shape. Objects are nothing. There is only the light. The light.
Wow. That's beautiful. I need that poem.
Yeah, that is beautiful.
And I feel that when I look at your paintings.
Yeah. So I think this is the right point to get started. We put them in an order that we thought, Aimee, made sense. But you can see the little thumbnails on the left if you want to direct me to something.
Great. These look great.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about this painting. Its title, how was it born?
This one happened during a stage where I had realized that I could just make things up. And I had some biggish canvases for me, pretty big. Like I think this is I can't remember. They're like in the range of 18 by 24 to 24 by 30 or 36.
18 by 24 in the name.
Okay.
Yeah.
So objects that I have or have painted before, or both. I did have some flowers in the studio, but I had this idea about the light coming flat from the front, and not really doing very much modeling on the flowers. So it was more a process of laying down color and being delighted by things that were happening without actually setting up the still life. And to me, I think it shows like there's sort of a flat graphic quality, the way the patterns and the table and the canvas is divided up. And then the big difference for me in doing these is that when you're painting from life, like reality can be quite bossy.
Yeah.
Like it keeps asking to be included just the way you think it is, right? But a painting is ultimately not the thing, you know. It's not lemons and flowers and a cute little creamer. It's paint on the painting. So and you know, that's what abstract art is about, like that it's actually the painting, not referring to some other thing, you know, some other object in reality. Yeah, that's kind of what I was playing with, was that space between putting things in that definitely represent something and just color that I like, that's interesting, and pattern.
I love it.
I love what you said about reality being quite bossy. And I overheard the most interesting conversation this last weekend when we were at the New Salem Museum Painting Competition Awards, because 40 of the 60 finalists were able to come. So we met so many amazing painters. It was just a rich, rich, rich deep dive into camaraderie. And I was standing near someone who was a graduate of one of these 3 or 4 now famous ateliers that teach super realism. And he was saying, it's amazing that I got this fantastic education in reproducing reality, but I'm 5 years out and I feel like I'm just loosening its sort of death grip on me and feeling able to be myself in my relationship to reality. And I really appreciated that conversation And then you just said reality can be bossy. It so is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it so is. But I mean, I think that's that schedule that artist is on sounds about right. Like you get the education takes a long time to acquire, and then there's a period of, integration and practice, and then, you keep seeing things and you keep asking yourself questions.
Yeah. Let's look at the next one.
Do we want to skip to the third one because it seems similar, or do we want to go for number 2?
I really want number 2.
Well, we'll go back to number 2. Because number 3 was part of the same period.
Yeah. Good eye, Nina.
Yeah. And again, these are the things that I have sitting in the studio.
I mean, your colors are just, I'm just swooning, totally swooning on all of it.
Thank you. Like sometimes I'm like, how did I even pull that off? Like, it's so
I think that's because we are. I mean, there are things that we artists do, but sometimes we are the bathroom spout that the water comes out of.
Yes, not the broken pipe below it.
As Nina knows this week.
I just had a flood this weekend, so I just couldn't resist. I'm sorry. It's like bathroom references right now fall on very different ground. Yeah, no, I just love how the colors, and I mean, I'm not a pink, I'm not a salmon, I'm not a purple person, but I mean, this just makes my heart sing. This is just unbelievably beautiful.
So thank you so much, Nina. There's there's representing reality, and there's things that you can do in paint to make an object identifiable. And then there's moving towards the place where that thing starts to disintegrate a little bit into just abstract brushstrokes, right?
Yeah.
Or just paint, or just like what you see, just color. And it reminds me of what you said about thin places where there's like representational. We can see that it's a lemon or an orange. And then there's places where, like, what is that thing exactly? Like, is it a thing? Did it become a thing? Or is it just like the start of a thing? Or did the thing get painted over? Maybe it's just some paint that looks like that.
Mm-hmm. I think that's where sort of the beginner and the absolute expert probably meet a little bit, because the beginner might draw an orange that looks like a kiwi because they don't know any better, right? And when you're sort of that, expert, meaning, very seasoned painter, you now have all the experience, and now you can start, like you do with jazz, playing variations on known topics, right? You can start in those variations, and then it doesn't matter whether this is a lime or a lemon or a kiwi. It's part of the whole, right? And as such, it makes sense, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, beautifully said, Nina.
Thank you, Nina. Yeah, that's beautiful.
I saw that yesterday too. We went into the MoMA because it was pouring down rain and the Met was closed. I'm not normally drawn to the MoMA because of my proclivities for realism, but it was fascinating to walk through. And it just happened that there was a Matisse and a Rothko and a Diebenkorn that all sort of had the same color schemes, and you could watch things through time, through this, all beautiful and all sort of more or less coming in and out of abstraction to complete non-objectivism, and all magical. It was lovely.
Mm.
And to just take that to for me, what it's literally about is reality is not as fixed as we think, and it also probably isn't as real as we think. And I think that's why it's joyful for me to make paintings that that show that, that do this thing that's sort of like, yes, representational, but the objects are clearly there for another, like to carry the light or to carry the color. And I think if the painting is working well, like it gives you this sense of something more than what you're looking at, which I think is the world that we're in. There, I think there's more than we know, more than we can perceive.
Oh, for sure. Hopefully. Yeah. Oh,
Back to
okay.
2. I want 2.
Okay,
Yeah.
go to 2.
Hold on, let me get my mouse there. There we go. There's
I
2.
love this. I love this.
This painting was for a show at Page Gallery in Camden, Maine,
Okay.
which is owned by my friend Colin Page, and he organized this group show by sending everybody a Fiesta Ware teacup in different colors, and I got the yellow one, and then you just had to do a painting that somehow included your cup.
I
That
love
is a
that.
great idea for a show.
I thought
Yeah.
it was a great idea for a show too. You know, and it just kind of brings up the question of like, how much does it take to give you an idea for a painting? You know, like there has to be some jumping off point between just like going through your day and going, oh, and going into your, you know, having an idea and making a painting. So like having sometimes an imperative, like here's your cup, do your painting. So, but yeah, I did make the setup for this one. I have this table that my brother built for me, and I have this window in the other studio, and I set up all this stuff, and then it was big and unwieldy, and I kept painting it and like not being able to figure out how to solve the flow, you know, like the visual flow of how you get through the painting, and finally landed on doing these color zones.
Yeah.
Which made it so much fun. And it's all opaquely rendered except for that big green jug. That does have some glazing.
Okay.
Which is a good way to, like, you could just paint it normal and then glaze the whole thing green, but that is not how to do it. Yeah.
What's fun for me about this as your colleague is that this painting gives the impression of being real when in fact it's that poem. You have silhouettes which are accurate and shapes that you've arranged with variety and skill, but then you've just named what the light is doing in that area. You've not really done, on a scale of 0 to 100 of modeling, you've done like 5% modeling, and the light is telling the story, and you think that there's modeling there. That's a really great thing to pull off.
I think that's why I like backlighting. I think it's because I love the simplicity of just the silhouette holding the shape. Also, like the other one we just looked at, both of them were front lit, and it does the same thing just the other way. So it's not, the object isn't broken into light and shadow. It's either held by shadow or held by light. And there's something about the simplicity of that delights me.
And I love how at first I thought this, oopsie, sorry, my mouse did its thing.
Foretaste.
I first thought that this was like just a sheer drape over the table.
Oh, clever.
It took me a minute to, it is so cohesive and the colors are so perfect. It really took me looking for quite a while to realize that there were 3 color panes in this, or 2 on the side, however you want to look at it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ah.
It's just so well integrated. It didn't, I mean, I've looked at this now. This is probably my 4th time looking at it, and it's only now that I see it. But I love the light is just absolutely exquisite in the colors.
Yeah, so the color just serves as a way to subordinate things, like that red apple over on the left. You know, is much duller in color than those little clementines in the center section.
Yeah.
You know, but when you're looking at the apple in real life, it's really red. It wants to be really red. So, yeah, that was just a way to hopefully structure it and keep. I also, you know, it kind of started to do that on its own because that green, you know, the light came through that big green jug. And then there's a little bit of shadow over on the right. So it really went through a long progression of sort of arriving at this stage.
Well, and to me as a viewer, the subject of this painting is not orange clementine teapot plant. It's what magic happens at a window.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you, Melissa. Yes.
For sure. Yeah.
So if you had all of the objects loudly screaming their reality, the subject would recede.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Number 4.
I'm going to click on this one.
Yeah.
So this one was also part of the Making Things Up summer. I had an idea that involved putting down some yellow, and then when I started putting it down, I was just like, I just want this to all be yellow. It's very unusual. Like I've never done a painting that looked like this, like with this much color, but it occurred to me when the paint was going down that it was possible. And I just like how things are kind of disappearing, like that, whatever that thing is over on the far right,
Mhm.
maybe a lemon, how it's barely there. I just think that's so fun to look at.
Yeah.
So earlier, I think Nina, you said that as on an artistic trajectory, when you're a child, you feel super free to do all this, and then after you've gone through the whole education, mastering the education, getting comfortable in the education, then you go back into wobbling, either not wobbling sounds hesitant, into bravely going outside to the right and the left of your education. But Aimee, what do you, when you, I know you're a sought after teacher, you do a lot of teaching.
Mhm.
How how would you teach this kind of painting from the heart to someone starting out, or do you, what is, how do you approach that as a teacher?
Well, I steer them away from adopting any rules.
Okay.
Yeah, like people, which a lot of people who are learning how to paint, they want rules because they need guardrails. They need a sense, and it's that also people. If you're learning things kind of out of order, like you're not really taking a whole semester of black and white design and really having that shape thing drilled into you, but you're trying to I think that puts you in a position of needing more rules.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are certain conventions, certain hard-earned conventions that tend to work really well. But as a teacher, I try not to hand those to my students.
Mhm.
Because then they won't be arriving at them from a place of understanding why, like they didn't win it the hard way. Like if you just get it handed to you, then you don't know why. You don't know what your options are.
Mhm.
One of the commonest ones I deal with is you know, don't put your object dead center.
Right.
A lot of my students have been told that, and it's such an easy one, right? Okay, that is something I can do, but that is a vast oversimplification of what it means to design a painting. And your job as a painter is so much more complex than that. And if you're reducing it down to, well, I moved my subject off to the side a little bit, you're missing like so much of the game.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I'm a great disappointment to one of my mentors, because I will often choose to put something dead center because it does something very specific. And if you want to do that, dead center is your spot.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that your painting is necessarily going to be symmetrical and lack a dynamic quality, because that's your job as a painter, is to give the painting enough interest, like enough enough, like balance it somewhere between static and dynamic, right? So that it's interesting enough. So you can do it with the thing in the middle. It depends what else is in the picture.
Yeah.
Or you can just have the thing dead center and it can look great if you know what you're doing.
Or you can try really hard and it fails, but it was fun to try.
Exactly. You learn why. Yeah.
This painting to me would lean left if it were black and white, but because that little pill bottle is red and 10 of those beautiful Cabernet reds, it holds it down. And I love that, the power of color.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. I see that.
All right, we're running a little bit out of time here. So
Okay.
I'm gonna take matters in my hands. I don't want to not talk about this or the next photograph for that matter. And I think we will have to skip over another section we had planned altogether, maybe just talk about it very briefly, but yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know how, I hope this shows up well on a smaller screen if forever who's watching this live or the replay, but yeah.
It's a big painting. It's 40 by 30 inches. And it's unusual for me in that it's painted in a very indirect way, like layers and layers and layers, which
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a lot of weird glazing and but it just came from this idea that, you know, I was sitting by the window talking to my friend and her toddler was on her lap, and the shadow from the window went right up the middle, and it just looked interesting to me. And you know, I shot some video and painted it later, but I mean, you can see what it is. Like this, I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory as far as what it's, why I painted it.
Yeah.
I love that it encapsulates there's the plant there and the light is warming the plant and the child who have life in front of them, and the mother she's supporting, but she doesn't know what the future is. There's so much narrative here for me.
Is it actually a plant or the shadow of a plant?
I'm thinking the shadow of a plant.
Yeah, the shadow. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And then again, the colors are just so amazing. Yeah.
And I believe this is your piece that's juried into the Oil Painters of America Nationals this year, is it not?
That is right. It is in the mail right now.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that for a very hot second. But before we do that, since we're here, I would be remiss not to click on this one here. So
yes, this is my book.
This is your book. So
I was lucky enough to write a book.
For those of you who have already understood that you are Aimee's tribe, there are resources available to you. There it is. This is a beautiful book.
Yeah, I was lucky in writing this because I'd had vague ideas about writing a book, but then I was contacted by the publisher who said, you know, we have this project and we're looking for an author. And I was like, I think that's right up my alley.
And where can it be got? On your website?
It can be gotten not on my website, but pretty much anywhere, any of the usual booksellers. Yeah.
Perfect.
And only as a paperback, I see. I'm on Amazon right now. I'm like, I'm going to buy this.
I think it is paperback only. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So it's not like one of those tabletop, which you
can and that's the thing. Like so there's it's not a book. It's not like a retrospective of my work. It's a book about plein air painting, and it contains a lot of my work, but also about 50 other painters whose work I admire and value. And you know, anytime I pick up a topic, it reminds me of somebody who does it really well. So I included a lot of other painters.
Awesome. I love that. All right. It's in my shopping cart. Sorry, Dad, I'm shopping while I'm on the live show, but
it's important. We approve.
This is very important. Yes, exactly. I just want to have it in my shopping cart so it's there when I go and, order the tissues next. So, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Great. So we just had sort of touched on the Oil Painters of America. So let's talk about that for a hot second before
And you are the current vice president, I believe.
I'm the incoming vice president, so I
Okay.
think there has to be a vote first. But yeah, I'm acting vice president. I've been a member of OPA for, oh gosh, maybe 15 years, and it's just a stellar organization. Really, by artists for artists, and they really are. And there's just a lot of heart to it. And they really put all their resources into creating opportunities for artists to build careers by entering shows and winning awards and finding
meeting new gallerists.
Yep. It's a great organization, and it's also they are exactly what they say they are. They don't want to raise the dues too high because they really want it to be affordable so that painters can be a part of it. It's just a wonderful organization. And the national convention, which is coming up the end of this month, is just terrific. It's great programming, wonderful people, a lot of chances to interact with people and meet people, and it's also it also coincides with the national exhibition, so you get to see the entire exhibition multiple times and really have a look at some good paintings.
Yeah, it's a great event. Dowd and I were able to go for the first time a couple of years ago, and we had a lovely, lovely time and met you.
Yeah, and it used to be just the convention, and then they realized that it's all painters and everybody really wants to paint, so they added a wet paint competition at the beginning of it, and it's just hugely fun. And then you can hang your work in the show, in the wet paint show, and they have separate awards for that.
The wet paint is watercolor and gouache?
No, it just means that it's all oil, but it just means
not dry yet. Yeah,
it's not dry yet. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm like, really? Oil Painters of America that puts a thing on with watercolors and gouache, but okay, that went. Okay, got it.
Yeah, no, when they, at the end of the 2 days, they hang a show of what people made, their awards given, and it's all still sticky.
Yeah. I had that. I made one oil painting in my life. Nothing that, would probably not end up in the trash had I not given it to my girlfriend who gave me the oil paints. And the freaking thing, it took like 5 days to dry. And I was like, oh wow, I love my gouache.
They do different things.
Yep, for sure. So we still have like a shit ton load of questions, which we won't get to.
No. I wanted to talk about Turkmenistan and how you were a cultural ambassador, and we'll have to do it another time.
Yeah, we'll just have to go back on the show, Aimee. I mean, my highlight is just looking at these, at your beautiful work. It's just, deeply rewarding to do so. So we have our two questions we always ask at the end of these conversations, of these curious conversations. So the penultimate question is, what are you sort of working on? What's coming up for you in the near future?
Oh yeah, so I have a solo show that opens on September 12th at Meyer Gallery in Santa Fe.
Fantastic.
And I'm in my...
That's a greet gallery. I really like that.
It is a great gallery. Yeah, they're great. I went to a show. I went there one time to see a Doug Fryer show, and ended up joining the gallery because they are so great. So that's what I'm working on right now, making a lot of paintings for that show. And I think I'm going to title my show Home and Away.
Oh,
thought of that while I was sleeping last night, because it is a lot of like some sort of domestic, like still life on a table, that kind of thing, and some interiors, but also some of the travel
nice
scenes.
Yeah.
So I want to do your White Hilltop Town for it too, Melissa.
Oh, that makes me happy. I want to see. We also always ask someone, what advice would you give to someone building a career? Looking back on your own, what was good? What would you say to them as they begin?
I mean, let's see. I would say the most important thing is to just completely trust yourself and don't really seek advice. I would say that you have to just believe that you can do what you want to do.
Hmm.
Yeah, like Pavarotti failed auditions when he was earlier in his career. Like he
Wow.
auditioned for stuff and did not get it. And I think you just have to believe that you're coming into your own. You're just because you're not there yet doesn't mean that's not the direction you're going.
Beautiful.
Perfect. I love that.
Me too.
Aimee, thank you so much. This was such a beautiful conversation on so many different levels. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for your candor. Thank you for the beautiful poem, which I think speaks to all of our art making. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Melissa. It's really been great.
Please come back.
I'd love to.
And all of those, I saw quite a few people were watching live, and if you have any questions, comments, please go for it. And same goes for people who are watching the replay. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be back next month or after the summer. We're not sure yet. Melissa and I need to talk when we see each other later this week, but there'll be another show.
We will let you know.
Well, thank you.
Bye, everybody.